Hey guys! So we're going to read chapter 12 today. In chapter 11, we learned that Laurel's parents died in a circus accident, or at least her mom did. I can't remember about her dad. When she was young, she is currently teaching Grace the high wire. So Grace is learning to walk like a tightrope in the library. She's practicing. They end up fixing the engine on their helicopter, so they're getting ready to leave to go to the Congo. So Dr. Wolf and Dr. Laurel Lee are going to go. And then we also learned that Noah Blackwood has a new panda exhibit in Seattle, and he has 3 baby pandas, which he says were born in the exhibit from his current pandas. But actually, we learned that he had someone go and a poacher go and kill the baby panda's parents and take them. So he's definitely a bad guy. So now we're going to actually get to the episode about them going to the Congo, and it's called The Flight. Subject: give me a break, from Luther Smith. To Marty. Marty, first of all, you're a liar. Kryptos Island, my butt. You had me going there for a minute, but when I read about the chimp you thought was Bigfoot, I knew you were putting me on. I printed your email and handed it around to the other guys. Unfortunately, it fell into the hands of the head nose picker himself, aka Dr. Weasel. All right, so Luther must be Marty's friend at school. He called me into his office and told me to quit circulating this ridiculous fiction, or he would take my email privileges away. He still hasn't discovered our secret computer. The comic money is piling up, and we should have enough to go to press soon. I think he's afraid we'll steal a boat and sail off to Kryptos, leaving a lot of empty dorm rooms and no tuition to pay for the upkeep of the school, and more important, the Weasel's salary. It really bugs him that his number one hooligan, AKU, is still disrupting things from thousands of miles away. Speaking of bugs, they fumigated the school a couple of days ago for termites, and we got a whole day off, just as you predicted. You should have seen the Weasel's face when he heard you were coming back, which reminds me, I have some good news. The annual field trip to Teeter's Dairy Farm is in a few days. The NP nearly canceled it in your honor, but the faculty talked him out of it. They assured him there would be no bull this year. Luther, P.S. Is your uncle serious about flying your friends to Kryptos whenever you want? Marty answered Luther's email from a seat aboard his uncle's private jet. Subject, respond to give me a break, from Marty to Luther. Luther, I'll be careful what I say in here, just in case this falls into the boogered hands of the head NP himself. As far as I know, Wolf, my uncle, was very serious about flying our friends out to Kryptos. He has his own jet. It's a surplus Air Force bomber he refitted as a transport. He keeps the jet in a gigantic hangar on Kryptos, and there's a runway long enough for a space shuttle to land on. The island was a secret military base during World War II. Wolf got it in exchange for some work he did for the government. I'd tell you what it was, but then I'd have to kill you. Just kidding. Everyone here is very tight-lipped about what the work was. I was telling you about Bertha and Phil Bishop. Well, I found out today that they're both ex-military. Phil was a colonel in the Air Force, and Bertha was an Army general. I'm not kidding. According to Phil, she was in the Rangers, and knows 106 ways to kill a man with her bare hands. One thing for sure, I won't be complaining about her cooking when we get back on the island this summer. She stayed on Kryptos, but Phil is along with us, helping his daughter, Phyllis, aka Phil Jr., fly the plane. Phyllis is Wolf's chief pilot, and she was in the Air Force too. So Phil's daughter is their pilot, I guess. In addition to us humans, we have with us the chimp you thought I was lying about, a raven named Vid, and the pocket dog, who is just along for the ride. Grace and I have been put in charge of taking care of them. Wolf has enough supplies on board to last him for years, including a Humvee, which he is using to get to Lake Tele. The jet isn't exactly first class. In fact, it's more like a flying school bus with bunk beds, but it seems to fly okay. Up by the cockpit is the communication room. It's manned by a half-dozen geeks. They sit in this dark room with their eyes glued to color monitors. I'm not sure what they're monitoring. I've popped in a couple of times and asked them what they're doing, but so far they've given me the boot. Speaking of which, there's a second Quonset on the island that is so top secret they won't even let me inside. Quonset, I don't know what that is. I feel like it's like a base on the island of some sort. I know you're laughing right now thinking I'm lying, so I've attached a digital photo of me in the cockpit with Phyllis and her dad. Also, I've attached a rough map of Kryptos, what I've seen of it anyway. I climbed up to the top of the inactive volcano on the west side of the island and discovered that you can get down into the crater. I didn't have time to go very deep, but when I get back to Kryptos, I'm going to see where it leads. Check out the map. And wait until you see the gizmo. I thought I wrecked it when I went for my swim, but it's completely waterproof. How cool is that? I'm going to head up to the cockpit and see if they need a hand flying this monster. I'll see you back at the cell after I land. Marty. P.S. Looking forward to renewing old acquaintances at Teeter's Dairy. P.P.S. Want to go deep sea fishing in New Zealand this summer? Marty closed the gizmo and buttoned it in his shirt pocket. When he got to the cockpit, he was surprised to see Wolf in the pilot seat instead of Phyllis. I didn't know you were a pilot. I'm not nearly as good as Phyllis, Wolf said, or her dad. Don't believe him, Phil said from the co-pilot seat. Your uncle's an ace. Marty laughed and turned to Phyllis, who was sitting behind them, typing commands into the navigation computer. We're going to make a supply drop at Lake Tele before we land at the airport, she explained. It'll save Wolf and Laurel from having to haul everything in their backs. Supply drops aren't like they used to be when I was in command, Phil said. Phyllis rolled her eyes. Oh, please, Dad, not again. I'm serious, Phil insisted. It's an automatic now. The computer calculates the airspeed, the size of the chute, altitude, wind, speed, and direction, target, all of it. You don't even get to push the button anymore. Phyllis grinned, then tapped Wolf on the shoulder. Everything's set. It's nap time for me. Think you can handle the controls for a while? No problem, Wolf said. If Dad starts getting on your nerves, just hit the eject button. I heard that, Phil said. How are the animals? Wolf asked Marty. The last time I checked, they were okay, but Bo is a little jumpy. She doesn't like being in a cage, Wolf said, and I don't blame her. We'll make it up to her when we get to Lake Tele. Marty stayed for a while, then wandered down to the gallery to make something to eat. This airplane feels as if it's going to shake itself apart. My cursive looks like it was written with a palsied hand, and every time I try to talk to Laurel, she's with someone. We'll be in the Congo soon, and I'll have missed my opportunity. I should have talked to her back on Kryptos when I had the chance. Back to fear du jour. Number 99, spiders with 8 spindly legs, their webs sticking to your face and hair. Fangs that desiccate insects, bundling the dead in cocoons for lean days. Number 100, broken bones, especially in my left hand, the one I write with, the one I'll do surgery with when I become a doctor. This must be Grace's list of things she's afraid of. Number 101, escalators, being pushed down one from behind or somehow being sucked down with the bottom step as it disappears into the floor. I'm not sure what good this is doing me. Number 102, smothering. I might want to move this one a little higher on the list. Maybe as high as... Marty found Grace sitting at the conference table scribbling in her moleskin with Petey on her lap. She was wearing her school uniform. Marty was wearing a pair of cargo pants Wolf had found for him and an old baggy shirt and his baseball cap. He didn't want to disappoint Dr. Weasel when he arrived in Switzerland. You're writing a novel? He asked. Just trying to work some things out, Grace answered vaguely without looking up. This meant she might be working on a quantum physics problem or venting her frustration at something annoying someone had said to her. Probably me, Marty thought. What volume are you working on? This is number 46. The other 45 completed diaries were under lock and key in the school's basement, or dungeon as Marty and Luther called it, awaiting a permanent shipping address. Grace's writing style had changed dramatically over the years. Her first few moleskins were filled with carefully recorded events in perfect detail with dates, times, people, and places. Now the words flowed from her mind onto the paper like a roaring stream, with little regard for punctuation or content. You should use your gizmo to keep your diary, Marty suggested. Save a few trees. I didn't even bring the gizmo with me, Grace said as she continued to write. I prefer using a real pen. Suit yourself, Marty pulled up a chair. You and PD seem pretty tight. Not by choice, Grace said. At least not my choice. She won't leave me alone. Maybe you can work your way up to the real animals someday. Very funny, Grace said, but that was precisely why she was allowing PD to sit in her lap. Many of the fears on her list were revolved around animals. She was not afraid of tiny poodles, but she thought that spending time with PD might be a tiny step in the right direction. This is the only way to fly, isn't it? Marty continued. Phyllis is a hoot. Did you know that she flew a bomber in the Gulf War? And Phil flew bombers in Vietnam. You should hear some of their stories. And did you know Wolf is a pilot? He's flying the jet right this minute while Phyllis gets some sleep. Grace sighed. When Marty wanted to have a conversation, there was virtually no way to avoid it. She put her pen and moleskin in her father's backpack. Using the backpack made her feel a little closer to her parents. Have you seen Laurel? She asked. Yeah, she's playing chess with one of the geeks, and I think she's winning. Grace sighed again. Is everything okay? Marty asked. Grace shrugged. I guess. You've been awfully quiet the last few days. What's unusual about that? Nothing. It's just, well, mom and dad, and everything's fine, Grace assured him. As good as can be expected. I haven't had a chance to thank you for trying to convince Wolf to take us with him, Marty said. It was nothing. Besides, it didn't do any good. It's the thought that counts, and that's what surprised me. I thought you were dead set against going to Lake Tele. I was. Well, what changed your mind? That was one of the questions Grace had been mulling over for the past few days. She still didn't have an answer. Would you believe I just wanted to do something you wanted to do for a change? Marty laughed. No. Well, it's true, Grace insisted. At least that's part of it. When I saw you lying on the shore, presumably dead, my first thought was, what's going to happen to me? It was such an ugly, selfish thought. I was ashamed of myself. I realized that when it comes to you and me, it's always me. Poor little frail Grace, afraid of everything. You're always trying to protect me. It's time I did something about that. You're not my knight in shining armor. You're my brother. Most of the time, Marty enjoyed being Grace's knight. More like tarnished armor, he said. What's the other part of it? The nightmare, Grace answered, and the feeling almost a premonition. And the feeling, almost a premonition, that the mystery of the nightmare lies somewhere in the Congo. We could tell Wolf about your premonition. Maybe that would be enough to make him change his mind. Grace shook her head. I think it's best to leave everything the way it is. Back at school, I'll have a chance to think things through a little more and maybe figure out what's going on. Marty doubted it. Grace had been alternately fleeing from the nightmare and trying to remember what it was about her entire life. But he decided not to pursue the subject any further. He had adjusted to Wolf's plan. After 7 years at Omega Prep, he could certainly stand a few more weeks. He looked at his watch. We'd better check on the animals. Grace and Petey followed him through several bulkhead doors to the cargo hold at the rear of the airplane. As soon as they got there, Petey started running in circles and barking. I know how to stop that, Marty said confidently. He held his cargo pocket open and commanded in his best Travis Wolf voice, Snake. Petey continued running in circles, barking. Snake! She slowed and eyed him suspiciously. Marty grabbed the tiny canine and stuffed her into his pocket. That's more like it. The trick looked a little more impressive when Wolf did it, Grace commented. The results are the same. Barely. Let's get this over with. I was in the middle of something important when you interrupted me. She walked over to Vid's cage and picked up an overturned food tray from the floor. Marty joined her. That's weird. What? The last time I was here, I left a pile of chopped fruit on that tray. Now it's all gone. He looked past Vid's cage to Bo's. The chimp's door was wide open, and she was nowhere in sight. I didn't do it. Then who did? Grace asked, staring in horror at the open cage. Well, Marty looked at the padlock. I could have sworn I locked it last time I was in here. You let her out of her cage? Just for a few minutes. She was going crazy. How could you? It doesn't matter, Marty said. She's loose and we've got to get her back in her cage or Wolf will never let me come back to Kryptos. Petey jumped out of his pocket and started sniffing along the floor. She's onto something. Follow her. I'll close the cargo door. We don't want Bo running amok in the main cabin. Maybe we should get help, Grace said. Don't worry, I can handle this. Grace wasn't so sure, but she didn't want to get Marty into trouble with their uncle. Reluctantly, she followed the mini bloodhound deeper into the cargo hold and watched in surprise as Petey disappeared through an open hatch in the floor. Marty came up behind his sister very, very quietly. Boo! Grace nearly jumped out of her school uniform. Marty laughed. Payback for the library. That's not funny. Yes, it is. What are you doing? Petey jumped down this hatch. The opening was just big enough for a human to fit through, or a chimp. Marty got down on his knees and listened. He heard a faint hooting. Unless Petey can imitate a chimpanzee, I'd say our fugitive is somewhere below. Let's get some fruit and see if I can't tempt her out. He headed to the gallery, leaving Grace to guard the hatch. Grace did not like dark, confined spaces. In fact, they were number 39 on her list, which was why she was considering climbing down the hatch. I took them on one at a time, Laurel had said. Chimpanzees were not on the list, but Bo was. Grace was convinced that Bo did not like her. Perhaps I can take on 2 fears at a time, she thought. Imitating Laurel, she closed her eyes and started taking deep, even breaths while she imagined herself climbing down through the narrow opening into the darkness. Her skin became clammy with perspiration. Her mouth turned to parchment. She felt her legs tremble. Go, she told herself. If you wait any longer, Marty will return and pop down the hole like a rabbit, and you'll have missed your chance to conquer number 39. She descended a short aluminum ladder and found herself in a compartment the size of a long closet, with very little headroom. Remarkably, it wasn't nearly as terrifying as her imagination had led her to believe. The warm air was thick with the oily smell of fuel and machinery, which was far from pleasant. But if she concentrated on her breathing, she found she could endure the confinement. Bo was at the far end of the compartment, straddling a round cylinder, 8 or 9 feet long and at least 6 feet around, that appeared to be covered with some kind of mesh. She was holding PD in the crook of her arm. "What are you doing, Bo?" Bo glanced up, gave Grace a quiet hoot, then went back to work. It looked like she was trying to unravel the mesh around the cylinder. "Are you there?" Marty called down the hole. He was wearing his father's backpack, which he had grabbed from the conference table to carry the bananas, apples, and pears. Camp stove and moleskin were in it, as well as the Frankenstein monkey. "Yes," Grace yelled, "and Bo's here too. Bring a flashlight." She scooted closer to the busy chimpanzee. Marty knew all about number 39, and he was shocked that his sister had gathered enough courage to climb through the hatch with the chimp below. He awkwardly made his way down the ladder with a small flashlight and crawled up behind her. "Did you fall down the hole?" "Very funny," Grace said. "Just asking." He shined the light past her and caught Bo in the beam. "What's she doing?" "I think she's trying to disassemble the airplane." "Perfect." "Hand me the bananas," Grace said. She pulled one off and started to peel it very slowly. Boy, do I love ripe bananas." So did Bo. She grabbed the whole bunch out of Grace's hands. "Hey, give those back." Grace made a lunge for the bananas, but Bo was too quick. She jumped backward and out of reach. Petey barked. "Now what?" Marty asked, shining the flashlight on the munching chimpanzee. "I guess we'll just have to wait her out. She'll get hungry." "Not with 6 pounds of bananas in her hands." "Good point. Maybe we can get them away from her." Grace crawled slowly toward her with Marty right behind. Bo clutched the bananas to her chest. "I don't think this is going to—" A green light came on, followed by a loud alarm. "What is that?" "Uh-oh," Marty said. "It's all automatic now. The computer calculates the airspeed, the size of the chute, altitude." "I didn't do it." The floor beneath them disappeared. Oh, I wonder what happened. All right, well, that's all for this chapter. See you guys next time.